can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. Braving it out in the cold. Glad you're here. It's funny, one of my favorite, don't be shy, you don't even have to stay in the last row, or you could stay in the last row, it's up to you. But yeah. One of my, I think, favorite topics to talk about, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to talk about it all that much tonight or not, but just popped in my head. One of my favorite topics to talk about around Buddhism is like this idea of what we think it means to be Buddhist, or like what it looks like is really what kind of popped into my head right now. That very often as we begin for most people to learn about Buddhist practice, right? Most of us did not grow up Buddhist, around Buddhist culture, Buddhist tradition, things like that. And so we come across it at some stage in our life. And we start to read books or go to Buddhist places or watch some YouTube videos or, whatever old Netflix, movie we can find. It's like some people's literal first and only introduction to Buddhism was not just Avatar, but like 7 years in Tibet, right? And so there's this image that we have of what we think Buddhist stuff or people are about. And what made me think about it just now is, as I was coming out here, and actually before I came out here, but I was like, I'm cold. I'm going to put a sweatshirt on. And I had this funny thought that went through my head of, you're leading class tonight, you shouldn't wear a sweatshirt. But that's an old thought. I've been wearing sweatshirts at classes for years. But it's an old thought I would have had in my, I don't know if I'd call it younger years of Buddhism, but like, in my beginner new stages of Buddhism, I would have been so focused on what someone leading Buddhist stuff or going to Buddhist stuff should look like, based on what I had seen in a movie or a book or a description or something like that, right? And so, when we started, for me in 2003, and we started the temple in end of 2006, 2007, I had this idea of what I was supposed to look like being a Buddhist and in a Buddhist place, right? And so I tried to do that. And that person back then never would have sat up here with a sweatshirt on, or God forbid, socks, I put socks on. So does that mean I'm a bad Buddhist because I don't want to brave the cold weather? No, it just means I'm cold and I don't want to be cold. And that I still have a craving and a desire to not be cold. Does that make you a bad Buddhist? No, it makes you someone who doesn't want to be cold. right? And I bring this up for multiple reasons. One, mainly just because it popped into my head, which is why I bring up most things I bring up, but also just to share or remind people who might be new or newer to Buddhism that it's not about what you look like or what other people look like, or there's no like facade that one should worry about. The only thing that matters in Buddhist practice is your thoughts and your words and your actions, your intention behind all of that. But it was funny to me that, the old thoughts of that popped into my head was, well, should I wear a sweatshirt? Should I wear socks? Things like that. That those things will still be there because those are the thoughts that you had for so long. Anyone had unpleasant thoughts for a long time in your head? Right? They don't just go away. Or thoughts that maybe are not coming from the right view or the best intention. Those thoughts don't just go away. I realized years ago from something that somebody said is that for me, the greatest point of practice is to recognize that all your thoughts have not just drastically changed just because you do some Buddhist stuff for a while. Your thoughts might not change at all, but what changes is your ability to not act on what those thoughts are. And for me, that's always been the practice, is to recognize, okay, these are potentially unhealthy thoughts or thoughts that are going to lead to my suffering or the suffering of someone else, or thoughts that are maybe selfish and all about me and don't really care about somebody else. Those thoughts are all there. But then can you stop yourself from acting on those thoughts? And for me, that's always the practice. I gave up years ago on trying to change my thoughts, right? I mean, if you've had angry, miserable, depressing thoughts for 30 plus years, they don't just magically go away. But what you do can help alleviate some of the pain that you might feel from those thoughts. And when you stop acting on these thoughts, then by default, you and those around you feel better because you're just not doing stupid stuff anymore. That's what I'm referring to my language about stupid stuff I would do. So, anyone have thoughts they wish they didn't act on once in a while? All the time, right? So, part of meditation practice is being to recognize these thoughts as they arise. And kind of look at that and say, that's a selfish thought, or that's an angry thought, or that's a greedy thought, or that's a pleasant thought, that's a kind thought, that's a generous thought. I recognize these thoughts as you go throughout your day, not to judge yourself or critique yourself or, again, thinking that you're a good or bad person or good or bad Buddhist, but just the awareness of these thoughts is what's critical. And then you begin to act from there. So, all right. So with that, I'll sit here nice and warm, and I hope you all are warm enough as well. We'll do a meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You will not float away. You will not have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right or doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. Okay, you'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with sounds, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all the sounds. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten, shoulders to relax. If you're on a bench or a chair, however you're seated, also just trying to relax the shoulders, sitting upright, feet flat on the ground. Also, hands in the knees or lap. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, just settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments. Just sitting, breathing. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move, and most important, the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with right now, it's not from anything I said, it's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs, it's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's simply your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your days. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. Whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy, not necessarily fun. It's not an escape. It's direct perception into the present moment and learning to be with things as they arise. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate so many things and people and places around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. There's so much energy and time, thought spent on trying to get other people and places and things to do things. And this practice is learning to work on your reaction to the world around you as it occurs. Because once we begin to move away from constantly trying to get other things to happen, and we focus on what we're doing, then we can become really immersed in whatever it is we're doing. And that's the practice. And I think I brought up what I started with tonight simply because it popped into my head. But it's really, I think, critical for all of us to begin to understand that when you explore the Buddhist teachings, he really, I feel, my personal take on Buddhist practice is that, yes, he was a monk and his disciples were monks and then nuns. And so he taught a renunciate life, monastic life. That's how he lived. It's what he taught. But as he began to engage with a larger sangha, a larger community outside of the monastics, the teaching shifted a little bit with regards to how people could integrate the practice into their lives. And so when I started, for me, it was this idea. I don't want to completely retell what I talked about at the beginning tonight, but it was this idea or this, what I call facade or illusion of what I thought Buddhism was really about. And it takes a long time, at least it did for me, to kind of cut through that because, when you read a bunch of stuff and you see a bunch of stuff, then you think that if you just model or mimic or become that image, that's going to work. And it really is, for me, became this realization that the practice has to come into your life as it exists now. That it's not the shaving the head and putting on a robe and dressing a certain way or going to certain places or any of that kind of stuff. It's just whatever your life is. And I think that, as I started to say earlier, I think for me, one of the things I take the most out of Buddhist teachings is, as he taught to lay people, he just wanted people to be pleasant and happy. And I think that's really important. And so what he was teaching with cutting through cravings and desires and things like that to monastics was incredibly important on that monastic path. But it's also incredibly important for those who are lay people like ourselves, that when we move beyond or through or away from so many of our cravings and desires, then that's what leads us to happier, healthier, more pleasant lives. So the teachings are the same, but the application is a little bit different. All right? So start to think in your everyday life, where and how can you bring some of these things into your day? And the sooner we begin to embrace that Buddhist practice is our everyday life, then the easier it becomes. It's like you get to practice every day. Often people have their routines, or they'll go to temple once a week, or whatever it is. And so there's this idea that once a week I'm going to do that Buddhist thing. But it's really an opportunity to practice every single day, wherever you are. And therefore the idea of a temple goes away. The idea of having to have a place to go to practice goes away. And you recognize that those in your life right now, as they exist, the ones you love and the ones that drive you crazy, the ones that you can't wait to see and the ones that you're just like, I don't want to talk to them anymore. All of those people, that's your sangha, that's your community, that's your place of practice also. So with that, I'll pause. As always, I really just prefer to kind of open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with that I can address, and we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening, and I'll respond to your thoughts, your questions.
Going along with the idea of integrating these practices into daily life, do you have any thoughts on integrating Buddhist practice into cell phone use?
Good one, man.
Yeah. So the question was going along the lines of integrating Buddhist practice into daily life. How do we integrate Buddhist practice with cell phone use? It's funny because I have so many thoughts on that, but I'll try to sum them up. I mean, I could probably write a 300-page book on that. I think it was, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks ago now. I don't know if you were here for it or not, but my phone had just died pretty much completely, and or was on the verge of dying, whatever. And so I needed a new phone. Sorry, I didn't need a new phone, but in our way of being, I felt like, oh no, my phone's not working. I need a new one. So I got a new phone. And it had this every time before I'd start class, right? I put on the do not disturb thing just so it's still on in case I get some emergency, something, you never know, with family or things like that. So I knew exactly where to go real quick, and I usually put it on right before I walk in. And so that Saturday or Tuesday, whatever it was, I'm standing in the back, and I pull up my phone, and I'd had it maybe a day or something, and I'm like looking, all of a sudden I can't find it. And eventually notice there's a button called focus. And if you click on focus, it then takes you to the do not disturb thing. And I thought it was really funny because, the brilliant geniuses who've created these things to make our lives so much simpler have also finally, well, they probably realized it a long time ago, but they're finally opening up to the fact that people cannot focus because of these things. So they even have a button now called focus, which I haven't even explored the depth of it. I just need to do not disturb function, and that's it. But my guess is it has something to do with you can turn off all this stuff and it'll allow you to focus on what you're doing. But what you're doing is probably on here anyway. So I don't quite understand the whole purpose of it. These things are a nightmare, right? At any given time, this or a computer, either way, both of which are within 4 feet of me right now, you have all these browser tabs open, and this one is different than the other one. So there's all these tabs open, and all these tabs are your thoughts, right? And it's they're just constantly running in the background, browser after browser after browser after browser. And there's all these thoughts and thoughts and thoughts, and most of them, you could look at it and realize all the tabs you'd open, and you're meaningless, 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 meaningless. I need that do not disturb button again, right? Complete distractions, complete waste of time, complete just hazard. Now, the flip side to that is they're incredibly important. They're so brilliant. They're genius. Every once in a while, someone would ask the question of, do you think the Buddha would have used social media, right? Absolutely. I think he would have, right? But the question is, how would he have used it, right? Probably a lot differently than the way a lot of us use it, I mean, I love scrolling through cute dog images for an hour, but I just can't imagine the Buddha sitting there scrolling through cute dog images for an hour, but it would have brought him laughter, who knows, right? These things are incredible for communication. They also lend to terrible communication. Thank God for the emoji invention, because then we have, the ability to express our emotions. You can put a bunch of text that has no emotion to it and then put an emoji to it, and all of a sudden, it's supposed to mean something. The phones are no different than anything else in our lives. It's a tool, and it can be used skillfully, right? The word upaya, skillful, means it can be used skillfully, And it can be used to waste 8 hours of our day. It's really just up to you. The cell phone is not the first thing that's been invented that wasted hours and hours and hours of our time. I mean, you're, a good couple decades behind me in age, but, growing up without a cell phone, but the just handheld video games you would play for hours. And again, this isn't saying that these things are bad. It's not about good or bad, but just they're things that we can get lost in forever. My mother just found an incredible Netflix series that she loved. It's only 2 seasons, thank God, or she would never have slept. But in like 2 days, my 77-year-old mother just powered through an entire show, 2 seasons worth, like 8 episodes each. And I'm like, Mother, now you know why kids these days get addicts. Now you know why your grandkids are doing nothing. Right? So, but 30 years ago, we had, USA up all night to sit and watch 20 hours worth of movies. So, I know this phone makes my life so much easier running everything we do, the different groups and programs and things like that. Like at the simple touch of like 3 buttons, I can notify like thousands of people what's going on. At the same time, I could spend 8 hours looking at stupid stuff. No offense to the dogs, right? So it's just a matter of how you use it. Yeah. Imagine if someone, and we have that today, you have people with incredible wisdom that their simple words are seen by millions and millions of people. That's very powerful. If you have someone with the wisdom of a Buddha that can simply share that incredible wisdom at the touch of a button, that's really powerful and life-changing. At the same time, you have people that are incredibly dangerous and toxic and hateful. And at the simple touch of a button, can mobilize millions and millions of people to do really horrific things. So, technology is not going anywhere anytime soon. And I think like much in life, it just depends on how we use it. Yeah. So. I remember, I think it was with the college group one night, and I was talking about non-attachment. And I turned to one of the college kids and said, "Can I have your cell phone?" And you could see like the fear in their eyes. I was like, 3 feet away from them. And I was like, "Can I just hold it?" And it was like so hard for them to let it go. It just becomes like this extension of our hand. So. Guilty. Yeah. Other questions? Meditation, Buddhist practice, cell phone usage. Yeah.
Something I've been wondering about for a while, and it doesn't, I don't know how to really ask it, but I'll try. I notice people that get deeper and deeper into practice tend to also group themselves with like people, which means they have it seems like they start to limit themselves on who they interact with and the worlds with which they can take certain types of stimuli.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that that's actually a big risk. And to do outreach and things mitigates some of that. But at the end of the day, Hamifli is pretty natural. Like we all group with like-minded people.
Sure.
Naturally. So I'm not sure where I'm going with this other than it seems like that is a thing that we might want to stay away from, and yet we do. Does that make sense?
1,000% it makes sense. And, as you're talking, and for me, really the only reference point that I have, that we all can have, from our own perception. But I know that just for me, living example of Buddhist practice, when I first got into it, the first couple years here in San Diego from 2003 to 2005, I like stopped hanging out with the majority of my friends. And because all of a sudden I'm going to Buddhist stuff and I'm learning about kindness and compassion and wisdom and non-harming and, all these types of practices that I was basically doing the opposite of all of them. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to hang out with them anymore. And then I defaulted into the judgment mode of like, well, they're all terrible people. I call this Buddhist arrogance. When all of a sudden I spent a whole 3 weeks trying to be kind and compassionate. Now I'm judging those people over there that I was hanging out with 4 weeks ago. Right? It's like, well, you want to go get drunk and do stupid stuff? Sorry, I'm Buddhist now. I can't do that. Right? Recognizing that that's what I was doing 4 weeks ago. Okay?
Yeah.
So those first couple of years, I didn't trust myself hanging out with certain people. Come back from monastery life for a year. About a week after, it was a dear old friend's birthday. And I'm like 30, 31 at this time. And they had this big party, downtown hotel thing. And normally I would have been like in the middle of all of that. And I remember going into this hotel room and all of a sudden I found myself like standing in the corner. I was like, I can't be here. I had to leave. It was so uncomfortable. And then as you work through that, I realized that it wasn't about them. It was me. It was my ability or inability to be around people regardless of what they were doing or who they were. So a lot of it was really me. It was just me judging them, thinking I was better than they were.
Yeah.
And that's really not healthy.
No.
And that's, I think, kind of what you're bringing up, right?
Yeah, I see more and more, the deeper somebody gets into it happens with any type of thing,
So,
right?
okay, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
And so, but it's just something that I would like to guard against.
Yeah. So I was starting to cut you off and I wanted you to finish that sentence, but go back to what you said. You said the deeper somebody gets, be very careful with that, because just because they show up somewhere more and more and more doesn't mean that they're getting deeper with practice. If showing up somewhere, and I'm not talking about you, I'm just in general, anyone, if somebody shows up to a Buddhist place every single day, that doesn't mean they're getting deeper with their practice. It just means they're showing up to a place every day, right? So getting deeper with practice, to me, would mean that you're actually opening yourself up to more.
Yeah.
Which again is, I think, what you're bringing up, and that's why you're saying you want to guard against that. But yes, you can and will have a tendency to start to judge other people for not being Buddhist enough, or not being kind enough, or whatever that may be. And you want to be really careful with that. I think becoming deeper with practice is to just expose yourself to everyone and everything that's out there, so you can become a part of all of that and observe it and be present with it and not let it affect you. Yeah.
What is my next question is on what you were talking about right now. So for lack of a better word, for let's say you have a group of friends, whoever that may be, that it's for lack of a better word, holding you back from getting to the next level of your practice, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I grew up in a Christian home. My mom always used to say, if your arm is causing you to steal, cut it off. Something. Right?
Sure.
So the idea of practicing and meditating every single day, you want to not kill is a bad word to use, but like the desire of the war going around you, want to bring that down, put the spiritual self up.
Yes.
How do you going through that with friends or family who is trying to take you to some places that will make you to quote unquote relapse back
Understood.
to the old self.
Yeah, good question.
That's a good point.
Yeah, these are very similar, kind of on someone's individual spiritual journey, Buddhist practice. You know, there are different experiences, and when I call them stages, I don't mean like in order, but there's different phases or experiences that we will go through, both of which you're bringing up, and that's how we interact with others while we are on our own personal journey, and how others' interactions or views or judgments of us impact us, right? And so, you know, and I definitely never want to contradict anybody's mom, but right, I'm sure your nice Christian mom is a wonderful lady. But let me just give you like another approach, kind of from the example you gave was, you know, you said you grew up in a Christian home, and your mother said, if your arm causes you to steal, then cut off your arm, right? Something like that. I'm paraphrasing, and I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah.
But, well, what about the other arm? And what about the leg? My point is that the arm is not what's causing the stealing. It's our thoughts. And I'm not bringing this up to like argue against mom. I want to lead this into what your real question is that it's not the arm that's the problem. It's our thoughts. It's our desire. It's our craving to steal or whatever it might be. And the same thing, it's not our friends or family around us that are the problem. They might not understand what we're doing. They might not support it. They might not agree with it. You know, I mean, I grew up in a Jewish home, and then one day I turned to my parents and say, hey, I'm going to move to a monastery in Taiwan. They're like, what? You think that went over well? You know? So for me, I think most important with both of these situations is that your spiritual journey and your spiritual practice is for you. And when we find others around us, there may be a negative influence, right? It's not always easy. You know, yeah, if you have family members around you and they're kind of, I think you even referenced like holding you back or something like that. Like you can't always just disown all your family that doesn't agree with your spiritual journey. That's never going to work. But at the same time, I don't suggest trying to convince other people that your practice is for them or even better than their beliefs, right? I think the practice is to figure out what works for you and just keep it about you. Often, you know, people seek, one of the things at the beginning, and I'm going to kind of tie it back to this, but one of the things at the beginning we take refuge in, when we say I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the community. So what that means is we're finding safety, comfort, protection in others who are also interested in practicing meditation, Buddhist teachings, things like that. And that's a really beautiful thing to find safety, comfort, protection in. But at the end of the day, even when you're in community with others, it's still just you. It's your thoughts, your mind, right? I mean, you're sitting here and you have completely different thoughts, right? The two of you sitting here, completely different thoughts.
1, 2,
right? So, but you're in the same space, hearing the same thing, surrounded by the same practice, but you'll respond to it differently. And that's the same thing with friends and family, is they're all going to tell you what, you know, I mean, everybody tells you what they think is best, you know? I mean, you think I'm sitting up here sharing Buddhist teachings because I think they're the worst thing to do, right? So we all will share with people what we think is best, and that's what others are going to do around us. And when we find people who may be bad influences on us or holding us back or don't really encourage or support our practice, that's okay too. Kind of coming back to what you brought up earlier, and actually even the way you said it, that actually becomes a greater practice for us. Because it's like, wow, here's a loved one that thinks what I'm doing is stupid. What a beautiful thing to practice with, right? That's their perception of you in your life. What we might have a tendency to do is to try to convince them that this is a good thing or better for us, or, you know, it's not like a movie. You know, you see a movie and you're like, that was a great movie. You tell your friends about it, right? They'll go say the movie, they like it, they don't like it, whatever. You go to good food, you tell them about it. Not a big deal. You get into some religious stuff or spiritual stuff or philosophical stuff that works for you and you try to tell people about it, good luck. You know? So try to remember this practice is for you as individuals. And then that will actually allow us to open up and sit better, I think, with people that are either holding us back or maybe don't approve or agree or, whatever it might be. Does that help?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Buddhists aren't on the street corner, like, holding up signs saying, come join us. They're not trying to like flag you down, This practice is not about seeking like fame or notoriety or, being the best Buddhist you can be. It's just about being kind. Yeah.
There seems to be a subset that have co-opted Buddhism to seek fame, notoriety, and stuff.
Well, when you say subset, what do you mean by that?
Like I see it on Instagram and stuff like that. That seems to monetize like meditation and Buddhism.
Oh yeah, I don't even have time to get into all that right now. But yeah, I mean, welcome to America. America will figure out
How to monetize it.
anything they can make money with. They're going to make money with it any way they can.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, there's beauty in simple Buddhist practice.
Mhm.
People come into in kind of a modern day Sangha, Buddhist circles. They come into them because they're suffering. Most people don't show up to Buddhist places or meditation practices or spiritual journeys because everything in their life is peaceful and happy. It's just not why we show up here. It's not why I showed up when I began. It's not why people show up. We show up to places like this, whether it's here or anywhere, because we're struggling. And there will absolutely be people out there that will take advantage of that. They'll open up your hearts and they'll make you feel really good and, charge you for that hour that you just sat with them. So the thing I say at the end of every class I've ever led, right? Buddhist practice is free. Meditation is free. It's sitting and breathing and learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else, right? Yeah. So, anything else before we close? All right, so we'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to the more than 4 million lives that have been lost during the pandemic and to their family and friends who suffer at this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple nearly 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. So as I alluded to earlier, those of us who lead, we're not monks or nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those of you who show up. So just about every night we have different practices going on. 16 months we were closed. We opened up about 3 months ago. So in person right now, we sit here Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night, and Saturday morning. We have a huge recovery Sangha. Anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be. In person is Tuesday night downstairs and Sunday morning as well. Everything else is virtual online, whether it's YouTube or Zoom. Yeah, that's no other updates other than that. We sit Monday through Friday, 8 and 8:30 as well. If you ever want to just sit in the morning, temple opens. We used to be open all day, but we do close during the day, and then we open up again at nighttime for the class. Same thing, Buddha for You is closed all week. Saturday, Sundays there, 12 to 3. Temple's here, 12 to 3 on the weekend as well. So anytime you want to just come sit, welcome to come sit on the weekend. So, yeah, fun stuff. I appreciate you all being here and working on yourselves as we try to get through this crazy life that we're all so fortunate enough to have. So, be grateful we're alive and breathing, and take care of each other. So thank you all. Have a good night. Thank you.